Hello, welcome to the April Knowledge Management webinar with APQC. We're so happy to have all of you here today. We are going to discuss today some research insights and best practices in content management that we believe have stood the test of time. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you can better prepare your organization now that we're in this era of artificial intelligence. And today I am joined, I'm Lynda Braksiek, the Principal Research Lead here at APQC for Knowledge Management, and I'm joined by my colleague, Darcy Lemons, who I'm sure a lot of you know on this topic, and she's one of our senior advisors here at APQC and expert in content management. So before we get started, I always like to do just a couple of reminders up front about other ways you can get engaged with us going forward. So each month we have, I think, some amazing webinar topics. And next month, because we have our conference coming up in just about 3 weeks' time, we're going to focus on some highlights from the conference in our May webinar. So whether you're able to attend the conference or you're not able to attend, I think it's going to be a great conversation. So we're going to talk about some of our favorite moments of the conference and some of our learnings. And we hope that you can join too, even if you attend, and share some of your learnings. We're also going to be hearing from one of our sponsors of our conference in our June webinar from eGain. And then in July, we're going to dig deep into some of our latest research on emerging technologies for knowledge management. So that one should be pretty fun. And we're going to do the same in June with a roundtable. So if you'd like to join us for roundtables and you are a member, please sign up to attend that roundtable where we can actually have some discussions with each other and learn from each other, as well as some of our research. So today, diving into what we're going to talk about today, we're going to spend a little time just really reminding ourselves why content management is so critical and what's that value proposition again. Then Darcy is going to take us through some of our content management best practices. And then we're going to close out talking a little bit about maybe what are those things we need to think about as we go forward with some of our strategies now that we have this looming thing called artificial intelligence really hanging over us, and what does that look like? And then, as always, we like to close out with a lot of resources for you so you can dig deeper into some of these topic areas if you would like. So we're going to get started to talk about why content management. And content management has really been one of those essential components of a really good holistic knowledge management program for many, many years. And it's really a key to the foundation, I think, of a lot of our other knowledge management approaches as well. The technologies that we implement, how we surface and leverage expertise within our organization. And so we're going to dig into just a couple of those reasons why that we have based on our research. And one of those things is really comes down to that productivity and the amount of time people have always spent looking for information. Now, this research is from a couple of years ago. I don't know that it's that much different today, but sometimes it's just really difficult to find the content and the people that you're looking for. And this is the amount of time that we see on average that people are actually spending each week, with some inefficiencies related to finding people, finding the knowledge that they're looking for. And sorry about that. I got off on the wrong slide, didn't I? And so it's just important for us to always remember that we're really looking at content management from an efficiency perspective and also from a relevancy perspective. If we can surface that most relevant content for people when they need it in the flow of their work, we can improve those efficiencies a lot. Also, one of the things to think about is that KM involvement in digital strategies has just really been on the rise a lot in the last few years. Some of our knowledge management teams and practitioners and experts are finding themselves in digital and IT teams. A lot of KM teams, even if they're not located in digital, find that the IT and digital are one of their greatest partners, right, to be successful going forward. So this is based on one of our surveys that we literally just published, I think, about 2 weeks ago. And this is kind of that current look at where KM teams are finding themselves from an involvement perspective in their organization's digital strategy. And there's about a third that are really actively involved, and they're playing significant roles in decision-making as it relates to those digital strategies. And that includes things like AI. There's about a third of the people who are they call themselves, I would say, moderately involved in the partnership. So they're supporting it. They may not be key decision makers, but they are key partners in this effort. And yet we still have a third of our knowledge management teams that are still trying to get that seat at the table, if you will, and get involved and help to make some of those decisions going forward. So just another piece of insight for you. And then based on our 2024 priorities survey this year, the top 5 technologies important for knowledge management right now, as you can imagine, heavily weighted in the space of AI, but also still very focused in that space of team collaboration, digital workplace, search, relational databases and knowledge graphs, all of which work so much better if you have a good foundation of content management, which is why we're going to focus on that today. So the last thing that I will talk about here before I pass it over to Darcy is when we think about content management in general, these are some of those things that content management traditionally has helped solve within our organizations. Now I'm showing you a picture here of our content management methodology. This is a standard way to think about having a life cycle methodology in place to help you manage the content within your organization. Thinking about what those business priorities are, establishing governance, figuring out a way to organize and curate that content so that you can then best deliver it, maintain it, measure it, and continue to reuse that information in your organization. But what that does is it really helps to reduce the redundancies and the inefficiencies in the organization, again, surfacing the most relevant content when people need it in the flow of their work every day. And what that also can do then is reduce the amount of inconsistencies in the organization of people accessing things from multiple places or multiple versions. When you have that good content management in place, you've got more consistent information moving across the organization more effectively. It also really helps to reduce those silos. Knowledge management is a silo buster in a lot of ways, right? Not just content, but busting silos within organizations and with our experts. But having that good content life cycle existing will really bust down those silos as well as those inconsistencies. And then finally, the quality aspect. A lot of times we hear from our members too that, yeah, I might be able to find it, but I'm never sure what shape that piece of content or that information is going to be in. So therefore, do I trust it? Right? So thinking about the quality of the content and information and the knowledge that we're serving up to our colleagues, we need to make sure that we have some governance in place and some structure and processes to ensure that that quality exists. Now, all of these things that I just mentioned today, you're going to hear a little bit more about how you do that with some best practices from Darcy. So before we get started, we're going to jump into our first poll. We at APQC love data, and we need to find out kind of where you all are when it comes to content management capabilities today. So maybe give us a little bit of insight about how you are set with content management capabilities today. And we'll take just a second. And I'll have to apologize for at the beginning, I got so excited talking that I forgot to advance the slides. And I was talking away, and so my apologies for you all. We've got it down now.
Oh, Lynda, I've done that before. So
I know, right?
We just get so, like you said, excited and
Yeah.
wound up about these, and we start going, and it's like, oh, wait, let's bring the visuals along with us.
Oh, look at this. We've got people.
Yay.
I know, isn't that awesome? I love seeing this. This is fantastic, Darcy. So hopefully we've got about a quarter of people in each of those buckets of implementing, operationalizing, and even optimizing. I mean, they've got some good best practices of their own. So that's amazing. So y'all remember when Darcy's talking through some of these best practices today, please remember, throw your ideas, throw your comments or questions related to any of these in the chat. And we'll keep an eye on that throughout the webinar as well. And we'll pull those out when it's relevant to the conversation and try to get through them all. So
Absolutely.
Darcy,
everything you just said, Lynda, and then, for them to share their experiences in the chat as well, right? So if you've got a quick vignette or story that you can share, hopefully, especially if you're not, don't be like me, be a fumble finger on the keyboard, but if you're good on the keyboard and can get your story in there, I know we've got a few to share throughout, but everybody loves to hear about other people's examples, because we can all learn from each other's examples too. So
Absolutely.
that was great, everybody. Thank you, Lynda. Thank you for everybody for participating in the poll. And I'm really excited to be here today to talk about these content management best practices and hopefully give them a little bit of context as we go throughout the discussion. So let me go ahead and get my technology working. There we go. Woo, okay. Helps if you press the right button at the right time, right? So I wanted to start just by giving you a quick overview of the best practices that we're going to be talking about today. Now, this is not an exhaustive list of best practices, but this is a summary of some of the most recent best practices for content management that we have uncovered through our research in this discipline. And so as I go through the next series of slides, I'll be talking about each one of these. We'll talk a little bit throw in there some comments on how AI can support or enable or even benefit from some of these best practices. And then at the end of today's session, there is a slide that has some additional resources for you all. So we don't have enough time to do a deep dive into each and every one of these today, but we do have some resources that if you want to learn more about one of these best practices, those resources will help you take that deep dive. They have great examples in them, and I just encourage you to check those out as you have the opportunity. So let me go ahead and get started. Here we go. So the first one I want to talk about something we affectionately refer to as the 3 C's of content management, right? And basically what we've learned through both our research and the work that we've been doing is that most organizations with really strong content management efforts inside their firewalls, they focus their strategy on these 3 C's. These are the things that they talk about most consistently, right? That they want to make that curation experience. That if you think of it as that searchability, accessibility, or findability of the content, and then the usability of the content, right? So enable the curation experience for the end users. Consistency, as Lynda just pointed out, this is a sticky problem for every organization, and content management can help with that. And then our customers, designing with our end users in mind. And so one of the things that I find really interesting is that, as I said, they may use different words, but the different organizations that we've talked to, it consistently comes back to these 3 things. We've got to better enable people to connect with the content that they need to be able to do their work. So we've got to improve that curation experience, Darcy. This is something I hear time and time again about how critical it is to be able to enable their target audience or audiences in their organizations to surface up that content that they need in the moment that they need it, to be able to continue to do the work that they're performing. The need for consistency, and this is not just consistency in terms of the look and feel of the content, but consistency also in terms of our processes that support and enable good content management in our organizations. So whether those are processes for contributing, thinking about creating that content and then uploading it into a system or a repository, a platform somewhere, reviewing and accessing the content, trying to get to that consistency of a familiar experience, a standard experience every time. And one of the reasons why, when we ask why is consistency so important, one of the things we heard is because not only does that enable for the people who are creating that content, enable them to be able to do so more efficiently and effectively, but it also helps our end users develop those good content habits as well, right? So if we provide the right guardrails and guidelines and tools and templates and things like that, that can help us all follow a similar path with regard to content management in our organizations, It really just makes the whole thing, the whole experience from start to finish, that much easier for everybody involved. And then finally, our customer, right, our end users, because they're critical to this. It doesn't matter how good the curation experience is or how good we think it is as good knowledge management practitioners or content management practitioners in our organization. Doesn't matter how good we think the curation processes and experiences or the consistency in terms of how we manage that content management lifecycle. If our end users aren't happy with it, then we've done a disservice. We've taken a step wrong somewhere, and we need to take the time and do the due diligence to figure out, where we took that misstep and then course correct. So designing from initially, when you're first getting started, designing with that end user in mind, ensuring that we can keep things as simple and streamlined as possible. Keeping in mind that those of us who might be on the production side or the contribution side of content management, we may think something is incredibly simple. Our end users might be having a different experience with the technology and the processes than we are. So having that, those open lines of communication to get that feedback and then acting on that feedback is really, really very important. And AI can really help us here in terms of the curation. It can help us in terms of supporting the processes and enabling that consistency. And it can help us with the customer experience as well. But really our AI in our organizations is only as good as our content management practices and processes. So if we haven't done our due diligence to either improve what we already have in place from a content management perspective, or if we're haven't done a good job from the design perspective, if we're just getting started, then AI is it can still help, but it won't be the thing of beauty that we hear so many people talking about how it's just going to magically make everything better for us inside of our organizations. So we've got to do the good job of laying a really strong foundation for content management in order to enable that artificial intelligence. Okay. Oh, whoops. Wait a minute. Went too far. Now I'm jumping ahead and giving y'all a sneak peek. All right. So best practice number 2 is all about governance and roles. And it's really important that somebody in our organizations or a group of somebodies has responsibility and accountability for content management. It's not going to happen just by itself. Not saying it can't happen organically, and oftentimes that is how it gets started in our organizations. But in order to advance content management and really continue to build on those foundations that we have in place and take it forward in terms of the strength and maturity of our content management best practices, somebody has to be accountable and responsible. So, you can see in the middle on the right there, we've got that central knowledge management or content management team. We really see them as being kind of that hub and being a key player and a connector between having some type of oversight group or steering committee, advisory group made up of business leaders, and then those business roles and the end users. And these might be people who are consuming the content. They may be creating or co-creating the content. They may be reviewing the content. They may be doing a little bit of all of the above. So having someone or a group of someones who can take that accountability and responsibility and act as that liaison between the business leaders and the end users to ensure that we are both focused on what's important to the business, the priorities there, as well as what's important to our end users, and working towards that seamless experience for our end users, and bring all that together is critically important to our organizations and to good content management going forward. And this is an example on this slide. What you see are examples of some content-oriented business roles. So these are not necessarily individuals who are full-time on a KM team or content management team, but live and work out in the business and have a contributing role in terms of the content management in their organizations. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. There are many varieties of content management roles out in the business, almost as many varieties as organizations that we've talked to. We've talked to lots and lots of organizations. And what we've found over the years of talking to our different members and non-members about content management is that some of them, depending on the extent of that kind of KM core team and the level of responsibility that they have with regard to content management, some of those teams, like professional services firms, for example, can be quite extensive. They may have quite a number of people who are focused on, they're the authors, they're creating that content, right? They're working with the subject matter experts in their organizations to get that content, to get the information out of their heads and turning it into content that other people can use. In other organizations, we have smaller, slimmer, leaner knowledge management teams, and we rely more heavily on the business. After all, they're the ones that own the knowledge and the information that we need to pull together and turn into that more explicit knowledge or content. So you may have and you may be your organization may be a hybrid somewhere in between, where you've got a mix of these roles, and you are your knowledge management or content management team and the people out in the business are working hand in hand in order to create the content needed for people to perform the work that they do. And we have several case studies in our online resource library from a variety of different organizations and in different industries and with different size teams that talk about the different roles and how they use these roles in order to support good content management practices in their organizations. So up next, best practice number 3, I want to talk a little bit about content quality. And this is really important because we can put out all the content in the world and fill those repositories, if you will. But if the content isn't of good quality, if people don't trust the information that is contained in that content, and we hear this all the time, then they're not going to come back, right? They're not going to continue to use it. There'll be this kind of word of mouth that can get out. And all it takes is 1 or 2 people saying, oh yeah, no, I searched the XYZ, SharePoint library, and everything I found was so out of date, I just couldn't use it, or it was incomplete, or the people that originally wrote it no longer work here. I don't know if it's still valid information, right? There's any number of scenarios. So it's really important that we reinforce and take steps to ensure good content quality in our organizations. And there's some things we can do to help do that. One is understanding the audience, right? And knowing who we're creating the content for, who's using this content, and how are they using it? What kind of work are they performing? And we can then better understand what kind of content they need in order to support the work that they're doing. We also need to ensure that we're establishing good, clear standards, right? Standards in terms of what's being written. Are we writing articles? Are we creating checklists? Are we putting out meeting minutes for, whatever is needed in the organization? But do we have the right tools and templates? Have we done the right training in order to help people understand what the expected standards are and how to create content that lives to those standards? And have we provided feedback mechanisms where if something is falling short, our end users, that target audience, has a mechanism by which they can reach out to somebody and say, hey, this is what I found. And I think it's, could be really useful, but it seems to be incomplete. or the copyright date on it shows that it's from 6 years ago. Is there a more recent version of this? Or could somebody validate it and tell me whether or not the information in it is still up to date and accurate, and therefore it's trustworthy content. So just what you see, the checklist here, you know, things that we know from our experience that our end users are looking for. And we apply this to APQC content, by the way, in our resource library as well. You know, yes, we want to make sure it's relevant and helpful. Absolutely, we need to ensure that whatever we're producing and publishing and putting out there is trustworthy. As much as possible, ensuring that the content is consistent. Having a similar look and feel makes it easier for people to digest that content and process and internalize what they're seeing on a screen, or if they've printed it in a hard copy. And then ensuring that it's reader friendly. You know, the days of, you know, 50-page PDF files, I would love to say that the days of these 50-page PDF files are long over with. However, I keep finding them, and I'm sure you all do too. So how do we, you know, what can we do then to help take some of those big, long, involved, complex documents that are still pertinent and important to the work being performed in our organizations, and convert those into something that's a little more reader friendly, a little easier on the eyes, a little easier for people's brains to process. And, you know, some of the things that we've seen, there's one of the financial organizations that we've talked with. One of the things that they do in terms of organizing the content and trying to help people find something that is most relevant and helpful to them is they made the decision to organize their content by role and by function. And so that was, you know, a critical decision that they came to at a point in their content management journey that based on the feedback that they were receiving is that, well, when I can find it, it's really good. But the stuff I need is still scattered all over the place. So they actually took the step to do some analysis of all the different repositories and restructure them and create what they call some systems of record. And so if I am a financial analyst at this organization, I know that I can go to this one particular system of record, and everything I need content-wise to perform my job as a financial analyst will be in that system of record. And it's maintained, it's kept up to date, it is periodically reviewed, and I can trust that content.
Hey, Darcy, I'm going to
Yes,
jump in.
ma'am.
We have just a couple of comments I wanted to bring up while they're relevant. And someone put a comment that said breaking down lengthy procedural content into smaller chunks has worked with the adoption for people, like, because they're more willing to work with those smaller chunks. So I love that. I love that example. And there's also been a couple of questions related to always back to that, how do we get those SMEs to work with us because they say they're, you know, they don't have time or they're not busy. How do we prove to them that this is worthy effort and that it's worth it from an ROI perspective? Can you maybe speak just a tad to that before we move on?
Absolutely. And because, you know, our SMEs are busy, right? Everybody's busy, but sometimes it seems like our SMEs are to the nth level of busy in our organizations. And so what we've seen that works, there's a variety of different tactics that organizations take. I know of a couple of them that they basically what they try to do is they've kind of taken and adapted the agile methodology. And I do say adapt because they don't follow it 100%, but they go through content creation sprints with their SMEs. And when we asked why they moved to that, they said that one of the things that helps their SMEs do is understand the time commitment and the level of effort it was going to take. So if there was, for example, at this organization, they needed to, there was a body of content that was up for review. And so what they did was they created a project plan, and the the KM team created this project plan. They met with the SMEs, and they basically, there was, I think, 2 SMEs on this particular example. They have more SMEs in the organization. There were 2 in particular they were working with. And they said, here's the content. They had a list of the content that needed to be reviewed. And they had a timeline and milestones in there. And the feedback they got back from their SMEs was that it made it helpful because they were able to manage their calendars better, and they could still continue to do their SME work, their day-to-day work, but by incorporating some of the principles from Agile, it helped them carve out that time to do the review that they needed to do of the content. It helped as well that these SMEs they knew who a lot of their target audience or end users for the content was, and they had good relationships with them. So they understood the benefit, right? And they knew that they were really helping some of their colleagues and peers out. And then the team also made sure that as they, any feedback that they collect, especially positive feedback on that content, that they feed it back to the SMEs so that they're hearing and receiving the thanks and hearing how other people are using it, and how appreciative they are of knowing that the content is up to date and trustworthy and all of that. So
that's a good example of embedding it in the flow of their work. Like we always talk about, like those practices, embedding it in their day-to-day work, giving them a time to get it done. And I think that's really helpful. So awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And this may help answer a little bit of that managing, getting SMEs involved as well as others as well. So one of the other best practices is all about around the content management lifecycle. And you can see on the right of the screen, this is APQC's content management lifecycle. So we wanted to put that up there so you could have an illustration of what we mean when we talk about it. And this is everything from, it's taking that content from the point of, it's even before we create it, right? It's the point of, oh, we need some content on X, right? And then we can say, once we've identified the content needed, then we can take steps to create a plan. How are we going to, create it, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a very structured life cycle here. All the way from identify then over to refining that content. What steps do we need to take to ensure that we've got it in the right templates? Do we need to do technical edits on it? Do we need to add some of the company branding to it, put the logo on there, whatever that might look like, to how then you deliver the content. So in some instances, some subset of your content might need to be reviewed and approved before it's delivered. And by delivered, I mean we are putting it out there, we're publishing it, we're storing it somewhere and publishing it, letting people know, hey, this content is now available for use. Not all content will need to be reviewed and approved, but there's often the subset that does. And we can put controls in place there too, in terms of there need to be access and permission controls in terms of who can access and view the content. Do we need to put controls in place around when or how often the content should be reviewed, and for any updates that are needed, et cetera. And then the final part of the life cycle is the use, right? People access the content. They're determining, yes, this is useful for me, or no, this piece isn't. Let's move on to the next search result. We can make some determination about when to archive content or even delete it altogether. And what we've learned in our work and research and in content management is that having a strong life cycle, knowing what that life cycle is, having it well defined, and then having some good management around that life cycle is critical, including assigning clear owners for the content. Who is accountable and responsible for ensuring that that content is not only is it created, but then as we go through this life cycle, we get to that use part of it. There's a step there called evaluate. Well, when is it appropriate to update this content? So assigning ownership for the content, not only, that helps it go through that life cycle as many times as it needs to throughout the lifespan of a particular piece of content. Having strong approval processes and review cycles, those can go hand in hand because when we have these in place, we can better define for people when this is going to happen. So our subject matter experts and others can plan for those review and approval cycles in their day-to-day work. Building in the triggers and timelines. Again, as Lynda mentioned, is if we can embed those and build those into workflows, makes it that much easier. And then monitoring and enforcing. And this often falls on the responsibility for that often falls on that knowledge management or content management team to ensure that the life cycle is followed, that people out not only on the team itself, but anybody that has some responsibility, like those subject matter experts or others out in the business are stepping up to the plate and creating and or reviewing and approving content as needed. All right, so next up, oh boy, another favorite topic, right? Taxonomy, woohoo! And I've been asked the question, in the day of artificial intelligence, and do we really still need taxonomies? And I continue to say yes. I believe there's still very much a need for a good, robust taxonomy or taxonomies in our organizations. These taxonomies not only help us organize our content, which makes it more findable, etc., but they often reflect how people, our end users, think about the content, how they connect different types and pieces and categories of content or knowledge together. And therefore, they, being those taxonomies, can help AI learn about our content in our organization, right? It can help the AI learn about not only the relationships across or among different categories of content, but also between terms, between topics, between domains. And so that just all that does is it helps make AI more effective for us and make it stronger so that we're better able to reap some of the, harvest some of the benefits of it. So a strong taxonomy can really help us train up, if you will, our any AI elements that we might have in our organizations. And then you can see in the center of the screen some of the other things here that organizations that we've worked with have said about taxonomies, that they should be, they should reflect the business needs. We really shouldn't, we can use, a lot of them will say, you know what, yes, we used some tools to help us initially develop the taxonomy, but then we went and talked to different stakeholder groups across the business to test those technologies, test the taxonomy, and see if it really made sense for them. Did it really reflect how they think about and use the content of the organization? Our taxonomies need to be flexible. It's not typically a one and done kind of thing. We do have to periodically update them as our business evolves and the knowledge of our companies and organizations, our products and services evolve, our content evolves, and the taxonomy needs to evolve right along with it. Next to last here is train and engaging our participants. So I've been talking about a lot of this from kind of that knowledge management team or content management team perspective, but we can't forget about the end users, right? And so having targeted marketing and communication campaigns with regard to the content that's available, with regard to the systems and processes and tools that support and enable good content management in our organizations. All of these things help keep our end users informed of what's going on, gives them some sneak peeks behind the scenes. They don't necessarily need to see everything, but it can help keep them informed of what's going on and the direction we're moving, any advances, enhancements we've made to our processes and systems for content management. It's really all about really, again, going back to understanding who our audiences are, the work they perform, and then having good change management practices, which still to this day tend to be overlooked a lot, not only with regard to content management, but in other initiatives in our organization. So, getting our end users involved, helping them understand what this content management thing is and what it means to them and how it can help them, and helping them, we had this on a previous slide, helping them develop good content management habits. And that can include good search habits. If they're creating content, it could include good writing habits, all different things that can help enhance their experience with regard to content management in the organization, regardless of whether they're on the a contributor, or whether they're a consumer, or quite probably in our organizations, they're both, right? And then the final best practice I wanted to touch on is this balanced set of measures. And just quickly, we firmly believe that it's really important that we measure from the get-go with regard to our content management. We believe we need to understand both from an activity perspective, what content is being consumed, who's doing the consuming, where is this happening in our organizations, which groups are not using it, as well as those who are using it. So our activity measures are a great place to start and help measure adoption. Our process measures then can help us identify opportunities for improvement, in addition to the feedback that we get from our end users. And then our outcome measures, well, those help us understand really the impact and the value of content management and what we're doing for the organization. Are people getting value from it? Is it truly helping them? How is it helping them? And that kind of information is often what we're looking for in order to keep our leadership informed. And that goes a long way towards helping ensure that we get resources and budget and people to help us with this. And I just want to say, for those of you who might be thinking about or starting on your measurement journey with regard to content management, you don't have to start from scratch. We have lists of content management measures available in our online resource library. So don't start with a blank slate. Go check out those lists, and you can pick and choose the ones that you think might be most applicable to your context in your organization. So I think now we have our second poll. Am I correct? Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. So what we want to know now is, given the 7 best practices, which of the content management best practices, and I think you can select up to 3, do you believe you have is the greatest opportunity to improve on in your organization? And improve on could mean getting started with it, or it could even mean, oh, we've been doing this for a while, but we really need to take a hard look at it and see where we have opportunities to enhance what's already in place. So
there's also a good question in the chat that Lauren Trees put out there, if anybody has any answers for her. I don't know that we have the answers here at APQC yet, but I'm curious if others do. But she's asking about practical experience with AI to actually ID synonyms or related terms that can help you feed basically your taxonomy and your ontology tools, right? So something for us to think about in the future. I'd be curious to see if anybody has any answers to that. I would love to pull on that thread too. So thanks for that good question, Lauren.
Absolutely. I like that question too. And absolutely, I'm interested in.
Oh my gosh, this is look at this. It's almost even. So we have a lot of work to do in all of these areas, right?
Right.
So, yeah, interesting. I don't think I've ever seen such an even poll before.
I know, right? I find that fascinating. Thank you all for
Yeah, this
taking
is
the
good.
time to respond. Lynda, I think this tells us also that our work with these best practices isn't done yet.
Absolutely. I was
Right?
surprised to see the lowest number was actually building the taxonomies. That means we're making progress, because it seems like that used to be one of those areas that we were not very good at before at all. So
Right.
I love that. Well, those were great. I love those, kind of timeless best practices. And I think you could talk an hour on each of those, right? Just because there's so much there.
Easily, yes.
So make sure you do check out the content. Someone asked a question of if those links in the PowerPoint are actually live links when they receive a copy, and they are in fact live links. So you can access our resource library with some of that content that we've put out there. That'll show you more detail about what we're presenting to you on the slides today. It'll get you into some more depth of the conversation. So as we go forward, I just wanted to close out. Today's topic was really about those great content management practices, so that we don't forget what those traditional practices really are, because a lot of them are very important as we go forward in this era of AI. But the other thing I will say is that they might also be morphing as we go through this era of AI as well, right? So make sure we want to stay on top of this from a research perspective. We want you to stay on top of this from your own experiences, and talk about how is it different going forward? How are we leveraging AI to help us with better content management, and vice versa? I feel like it goes both directions, right? So as we go forward, there's just a couple of things we wanted to share with you. And this is just a sneak peek into some of our latest research. And we're going to be digging deeper into this over the next couple of months with multiple activities like roundtables, webinars, and more content in our library. But this is to tell you, this is the research that just came out last month, where people are in their journey as it relates to AI deployment, just to give you an idea. And about 1/4 of the people that are responding are now actually in the implementation, operationalizing, and even optimizing some of their AI solutions already. And these numbers just keep jumping as we go forward. And a majority of the people on this are doing something related to either evaluating and piloting, right, their use cases for leveraging AI. And when I say AI, I'm including both traditional AI components as well as the newer generative AI. Now, our research study, that if you check that link out that's on this slide, it takes you in and separates some of those capabilities out and lets you see the research based on just generative AI versus traditional AI as well, if you're interested. But this is just a sneak peek, just to give you an idea of where others are at in their organizations and what they're doing. This is another sneak peek at those use cases. I specifically pulled out generative AI on this one because a lot of the use cases are similar for some of our traditional and generative, with the exception of the creation of new content, right? So generative AI is that tool that helps us with creating brand new content, text, images, music, videos, art, whatever it is you're doing. But the majority of our AI solutions are really looking at that automation component right now, automating data analytics, helping us make better decisions, personalizing that content, using it for auto tagging, right? This helps you with your content management capabilities, and customer support. And I was just sharing with Darcy before we started the call today that I was listening to a panel discussion from some other experts talking about AI. And they were talking about, this is the very common place that we're starting with AI right now, right? It's about automation, making better decisions and things like that. But they were started to talk about innovation. And they said, it's great. Innovation is going to be something we can leverage from an artificial intelligence perspective. But first, we have to build trust with those more, I'll say, mundane kind of things that we're doing, those automated tasks, or those tasks that are mundane that we can automate and take it off the plates of humans, so that humans can focus more on more strategic and more analyzing data and making even better decisions. Let AI help you with some of those more mundane. That also helps to build our trust of what AI can do for us. And then we can move into a more advanced state of AI as well for solving things like medical type procedures and, all of those great things that we really want AI to do for us in the future. So that scientific discovery is a little down on the list right now, but I have a feeling that's going to start moving, right, as we get more comfortable and more experienced, right, with some of these AI capabilities. The other thing is that, sorry about that. AI also, as we think about this, it's not a digital transformation. It's actually more of a cultural transformation. This is, it makes me think about when, the internet first came about. or when enterprise search first came about. Like, these were big deal things, and everyone went, oh my gosh, this is going to change how we work so much. I don't even know what my job's going to look like anymore. And we need this and we need that, right? This is big like that. This is very big, and it's going to change how we think about our work, and it's going to change how we interact with the computers that we use every day, right? It's going to change a lot of things. So it's important that we remember that there's people behind all of these positions that we're changing, right, with these AI solutions. And it's important to remember that those components of change management, where we help people transition to a new way of working, are still thought about, are still considered, are still planned for, while we continue to build that trust of what it's like to work with an artificial intelligence solution in our organizations. So this is just a reminder of those components of change management. If you don't have them in your organization, or you're not able to leverage change management, it's something that really should be considered as you implement anything like content management, and especially as we move forward in that AI era. And these are some of the best practices based on our research over the last couple of years as well, that really help you see it's not also just about communicating and training. It's about understanding the role that leadership plays in when you're shifting through a cultural transformation, and making sure that they have the messages they need to be effective, and that they're stepping into their role to be an example of what they're expecting everybody else to do in the future as well. Understand the structure and the resources you have in place for change management. Do you have a centralized function that you can leverage and pull on some of those resources? Do you have a centralized approach to change management? So a common language and a consistent methodology for managing change. Make sure you're leveraging that as you move forward with these solutions, like building new taxonomies and building a content management solution. Somebody was saying something in the chat about how they have a hard time, engaging with the subject matter experts within the business. Make sure you're leveraging some of those change management, I'll say, techniques to build trust, to build a relationship, help them see the value that it is for them and their teams. It's not just you trying to force some new capability on them. You're doing it for the benefit of them, their teams, and the organization's bottom line, right? And then, like with anything, you do have to make sure you have some communications and training, but also focus on that engagement component, right? What's that emotional connection that people have to AI or against AI, right? Or content management, whatever solution you're putting in place, make sure you understand why people might be resisting and what it is they need to know to feel more comfortable with some of these new solutions. And then, as always, we want to make sure that we have those reward structures in place to help support people, right? How are people being measured to use some of these new capabilities? Are they being asked to do content management or content authoring, and yet it's not a part of their performance review, and their manager doesn't even know they're doing it, right? That makes it a really challenging to get people to want to buy into doing something like that if it's really not part of their day-to-day job. So just some reminders from a change management perspective that we wanted to make sure that we brought up today. And then the last thing I want to talk about is just some best practices to think about as you prepare for AI in your organization. We talked about content management today, and that was kind of the crux of our conversation. But we want to make sure that you're remembering the other things that will help make AI successful going forward. The first one is to really understand the business need and ensure that you are leveraging the KM approaches that you might already have that are going to help you be successful, and building some of those new capabilities that you might need to help the business be successful. And then again, we talked about ensuring content management is in place today. And the last two are really about the people again, focusing on the impact to the people. What is the desired end state for leveraging something like artificial intelligence? And do your people know and understand what that looks like? And what's the end goal? What business problem, again, are you trying to solve? And do they understand that? And making sure that you're applying some of those effective change management practices and bringing them along for the journey, because it really is going to be a journey, a cultural journey. It'll be challenging, but it can be really exciting in the end if everybody feels like they have what they need to be successful. And then finally, the upskilling needs that are going to be necessary for this journey of AI as well. Identifying what are those new skills. We hear a lot about prompt engineering, AI engineering. I need to learn coding skills to be able to be effective with AI. But the other component is you really need to understand what you're using it for and how to communicate what those benefits are in the organization. So just thinking about what are those skills needed. It might not be the same in your industry as it is in someone else's. So make sure you understand what's needed for your company, your industry, and for the people within your organization, right? And we're going to close with a final poll because, again, we love data. So when you think about AI just in general, I know we talked a lot about content management today, but if you're thinking about all the components of implementing AI in your organization, maybe what is one of the greatest areas of opportunity that your organization might have to prepare for AI? Is it content management, what we talked about today, or is it one of these other areas? So we'll just take a minute. And, I would love this topic of AI while we're waiting for the poll results here. There's so many pieces of research out there and articles being written. If anybody has their favorites that they want to share, pop them in the chat. We always love to share where everyone else is getting some of their information. Like I mentioned today, I watched a great panel discussion from some experts talking about AI, and they talked about upskilling needs and the ROI for their organizations and things like that. So I love hearing from other people where you're getting some of your information and where you're, I'll say, trusting the information that you're getting as well, because there's a lot out there right now. Again, we're kind of all over. Wow.
Nice.
So effective content management makes sense for the audience today because we all
Right.
should to talk about content management, but we still have a lot to focus on those upskilling needs and the impact to the people, as well as really understanding what are those use cases we need, right, to help our business. We're not doing AI for AI's sake, right? We're doing it because we want to solve a business problem or improve a business product or an innovation, right, in our organization.
Lynda, that's funny. We used to say those same things about knowledge management.
Yeah,
We're not doing KM for the sake of KM, but
right.
because we want to solve a business problem.
That's right. It's the same content management, same thing, right? We're solving a business problem with effective content management because it's really hard to take on all of your content management challenges at once. So what are the most important, right? And I think about just a quick conversation I had with a member about a month ago, and I asked them about what they were doing with artificial intelligence, and they said they had 7 or 8 use cases that they had started to look at, right, within their organization. And I said, tell me about your content management practices with those use cases. And he said, funny that you asked me that, because he said, we're able to move forward with about 6 of our use cases, but the other 2 we had to put a stop in because we realized how chaotic the information was associated with those use cases. So we've had to backtrack and go put some structure in place for that information before we can move forward with our use cases, or our AI capability will not be effective. So that's an example of someone who said, yes, we absolutely need good content management practices still. They might look a little different. We might be able to do them a little bit faster and more effectively, but we still need them in place in order to be effective with some of our technologies. So with that, I'm going to close us out by sharing that we always give you a list of some resources that you can go look at if you have more questions and want to dig a little bit deeper. And we will also share all of this information in we'll share the slides with you and the recording, but we also would like to do a nice summary of what we talked about, which includes a lot of the chat that happened in this webinar. We don't include names, we just use them generically so that everyone can see kind of where the conversation went and what kinds of questions and answers were put out there for those who may not have been able to attend. So with that, I think we are 1 minute before the bottom of the hour, so we will go ahead and close it out. If you do have additional questions, feel free to still put them in the chat. We'll make sure that we get some answers for you out there, or others, if they're still online, will help answer them with us. But with that, we will say goodbye and thank you again for joining us. What a great conversation. And we hope to see you again soon. Have a great day.